Hey guys, so I wanted to record a video about why I drew what I drew for Inktober, so I decided to go ahead and record this video, and it might actually come out before my fan art review thing. I'm not entirely certain if I'll do that video anymore, actually, because it's been such a huge pain in the ass to put together, and if I do it, I won't script it quite as heavily because of the fact that it just isn't working, and I'm not very good with, like, strict scripts. It just doesn't work for me. Anyway, so let's talk about this first piece. Alright, so I believe that the first piece that I did, the prompt was ring, and I ended up going ahead and drawing a fairy who was supposed to be dead. She doesn't really look dead, in the middle of a fairy ring, which was not my first idea. My first idea was actually a couple of like creepy looking clowns in the middle of a circus ring, but I decided not to do that one because I wasn't really as into the idea as I was into the fairy ring idea, and I actually looked into different types of mushrooms and all that stuff. I might put some of those sketches here. I don't know. Those might end up being Patreon things when the Patreon thing comes out. The whole deal is that she's a dead fairy in a fairy ring, and she's supposed to be naked. I'm surprised that it's still up. Instagram hasn't decided to take it down. I mean, she's not really showing anything. Like, her nipples are covered, her fucking everything's covered. I think even YouTube wouldn't hit this, so yeah, as long as no nipples showing, it's all good. Alrighty, and then the next prompt was Mindless. And for this one, I decided to draw, take it a little bit more literally, and draw a guy literally picking his own brain, which is pretty fun. It was a pretty fun thing to draw. I'm not incredibly happy with the way that it turned out, and because of the way that Instagram cropped it and the way that I cropped it myself, it kind of cropped weirdly on Instagram, so it's not really the best thing in the world. And then my next piece I am actually really proud of because it still looks adorable, and it would actually make, I think, a really great tattoo. Yeah. Anyway, so this is my first, like, true Instagram picture, like, with my materials and stuff, and most of what I used for this challenge was actually a dip pen, and then also a Sumi ink brush pen, which I got, like, 10 days into the challenge, I believe, if I remember correctly. And I did use some microns, especially for this one. This was the first one I used the microns for, and I also used, I believe they're the aqua brushes from Pentel, because they were like really easy to just like pour water from them into a palette and then use the ink that I had for my dip pen and dilute that a little bit and then shade it with that, which is what I did here and for most of the pieces up until the later half of Inktober. Okay, and then the fourth prompt was freeze, I believe, if I remember correctly. I'm not looking at... Oh, yeah, it is freeze. Okay, I just realized that, that's what it was, and, great me moving around in a chair. Anyway, so I actually tried really hard with this one. You can see my finger a little bit in the photo because I was trying to keep it flat. A problem that I was having with my sketchbook that I decided to use was that the paper would buckle, and I think next year I might try something a little bit more high quality, although I'm not sure if I'll be doing Inktober next year. I might just end up doing something a little bit less Inktober-y. I might do something with all my characters or something like that, because I was like really, really wanting to draw my characters, but I didn't have the time to do so because I was doing Inktober stuff, and I enjoy drawing my characters in spoopy, like, outfits and whatnot, so maybe next year I'll put a little bit more effort into my OCs rather than just sitting around and drawing random images, although it was fun and a good exercise of stuff like my ability to draw landscapes, which is what I did for this image. And I really wanted to try and draw a landscape because I don't really do very many of those, and I think it actually turned out rather well, although the pumpkin next to the door of that little shack is extremely large and should not be that size. But yeah, I think it turned out rather well. The icicles don't look like icicles, they look like weird drips or something like that, but that's pretty much the only gripe that I have with that one. And the next one was build. The prompt was build, and I think I taped this down, if I remember correctly. My inspiration for this one was obviously Legos, and I decided to go ahead and try and fit the sun in there and the clouds and stuff, but the sun doesn't really read as the sun, probably because of where I placed it and the fact that it isn't a little bit more open. If it was a little bit more open, it might actually be a little bit better. But yeah, if it was a little bit more open, it would probably be a little bit better. And you can see the paper buckling actually in this image. I enjoyed the prompt for this one, and I liked the idea that I came up with pretty much right off the bat, so it didn't really require any development pretty much whatsoever. So I decided to stick with it. The thing that took the longest was probably those little dots that you see on the, like, Lego, like, flat pads, which is what I used for the ground here. And then the dog as well, and the friggin' roof. Although I actually forgot some of the lines on the top of the roof now that I'm looking at it. I can't believe I didn't notice that until just now. Oh, yeah, and also for any white highlights that you see that are not like, you know, that I didn't plan from the start, I decided to use sometimes acrylic and then sometimes the Sakura Jelly Roll pen, which I actually don't like quite as much on top of ink. It just doesn't show up quite as well as it does on toned paper, which I do have. I just decided not to use it for this one. I might use it next year, actually, because I do like adding white highlights more than I like adding darkness. And it would be a lot easier to just use, like, black and then add highlights and then stuff like that to it. So, I don't know. I'm thinking about things to do next year. But it was fun also to do traditional art when I usually do digital art, although by the end, with all the struggles that I had doing this challenge, I was definitely ready to go back and do, and do some more digital art. I think I'm starting to actually, like, OD on that one a little bit, because I've been doing so much digital art over the past, like, week, now that it's the end of October, and I can finally do stuff and have the time to finish, like, digital pieces. Okay, what number am I on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alrighty, so this next one, the prompt was Husky, and I did it the same way most people did it when I looked at their Instagram feeds, and the Inktober hashtag. I saw that most people decided to draw a husky, a literal husky, and I did that too, obviously, that's what I just said, but I decided to give him a little bit more of an environment and have a little bit of a backstory to him, although I didn't really develop that too much. So basically, his whole deal is that he is a husky detective. Get it? He's, like, husky, he's been, like, fucked by the man, and he's getting even more husky because he's smoking a cigarette, so his voice will become husky. And it's basically just filled with a whole bunch of really bad jokes and warping paper. But yeah, it was interesting, and let me see. I was reading the description, and it's just me complaining about how my paper was buckling. I don't think I'd figured out that I could just tape down the sides yet, so even though that kind of ruined one of the images, so it didn't really ruin an image. It more so, like, it caused some of the ink to come off of the page, so there's just a white spot where there should be a white spot, and I could really just, like, fill it in if I wanted to. Anyway, this is another, like, you know, sort of a semi-pun-tastic piece. So the prompt for this one was enchanted, and initially I had this idea of a witch, but then I decided that I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I decided to draw the beast from oh my god, what is the movie called? From Beauty and the Beast, because he is enchanted, and I wanted to show him, like, protecting the rose in that one scene where Belle, like, finds the rose, and he's like, no, don't touch it, and she, like, you know, jumps back, and he grabs it to make sure that she doesn't accidentally, like, touch it or whatever. Anyway, I really liked the hatching that I did for this piece, and I really liked the way that I edited it, because the black and the white were so crisp, it was easy to make it look a lot cleaner than it looks in real life, which is really nice. Actually, something that I heard from multiple people was that the pieces that I made for Inktober actually look a lot better in person than they do online, which is an issue if you're looking at just my Instagram. But if you're looking at my stuff in person, then that's great. That's awesome. Alrighty, so unfortunately, this next piece is a little bit of a prophecy for what's going on right now in my life. But, so for day 7, I believe, I decided to draw, what's it called? Oh my god. I don't remember what the prompt was for this one. I think it was Frail. Yeah, it was Frail. So I decided to go ahead and draw an old woman, and death is, like, coming for her. That's what the blackness is supposed to be, but I decided to make it a little bit more ambiguous, so it could either be a curtain or it could be death. And technically you could interpret the curtain more as, like, a symbol for death, like the curtain is closing on her last stage of life, haha. But it could also be, but it could also be death. So that was my idea there. I decided to be a little bit more ambiguous with that one. And for the highlights on that one, I used the fucking Sakura Jelly Roll, and it actually turned out rather well because of the fact that it wasn't pure black ink, which is good, I guess. And the friggin' Sumi and Jelly Roll just don't work together. Don't do that. They suck. And then here is day 9. Actually, day 8 was Frail. Okay, well, anyway, day 9 was Swing. And as I say in my Instagram post, I did have initially a little bit more of a dirty idea for this one, which was, swinger, as in somebody who has sex with people they are not married to, and they, like, switch partners, or have group sex, etc., etc. I looked up the friggin' definition for that. But yeah, it was pretty fun looking up references for this one, because I actually watched some swing dancing, and it was actually really fun to watch, and I decided to try and get as much of that personality into the piece as I could. Unfortunately, I'm not quite to the place where I am, like, 100% able to capture that sort of emotion and movement, but I think I did pretty well, and I really like the way that her hand is placed in her left hand, because it actually does sort of fit the placement of the hand in Swing, because I did look up a reference for that. I did use a reference, actually, for a majority of the pieces that I did up until that point, if I remember correctly. Actually, no, I did not. I didn't use any references on anything except for the first one up until that point. Alrighty, and then the next one was day 10, and it was a witch. And I wanted to do something with candy corn for the design thing, because, like, candy corn is so fun, and I wanted to do something, like, clearly Halloween themed. So I decided I wanted to give her a candy corn dress, and I think she turned out really cute. Not a big fan of the design, which is a problem because pattern, I believe, was the prompt for this one. But I do like how the hat turned out. I think the hat is a really cute idea. I think I've seen it before, somebody else do it before, but I'm not entirely certain about that one. Alrighty, and then day 11. So this one was clearly inspired by Adventure Time. Actually, the freeze image that I did, I wanted to draw, what's his ass? King Freeze, or whatever his name is. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But I wanted to draw him, or maybe Gunther. And I did end up drawing, Gunther-like penguins for, day 11, in order to have a little bit of fun with it. Because I actually had a different plan for this one, but it wasn't turning out the way I had hoped. So I decided that I wanted to go ahead and try something different, and I wanted to use the white space that I had on my, in my notebook, or my sketchbook, and I wanted to work around that. So I feel like the Arctic Tundra that is this piece works pretty well, and I like the igloos a lot, because they're nice and simple and cute, and I feel like everything's, like, placed well, so it's not too heavy in any one place, if that makes any sense. Alrighty, and then day 12, I was having a lot of issues with this one. Like, I got really irritated, and I almost ripped a page out of my sketchbook. And it was rough, and I wrote motherfucker on one page because I was just having so much trouble drawing Toru from Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. In the end, I decided to go ahead and do this one, mostly because I was just I felt crazy, and I wanted to draw a chibi or something fun, so I decided to go ahead and do that. And this was the first time I believe I used the Sumi ink as well. And that actually really helped with making this piece a lot more deep than the other ones. Like, most of the... Actually, no, I think I used Sumi ink for the day 11 as well, and day 10. Oh, and day fucking 9. Okay, I used it a lot earlier than I thought I would. But yeah, so it turns out that I ended up actually using it during, all the way at the beginning of day 9, so I used it for the, swing piece, which is really cool. But yeah, this is the first time I remember actually using it for Toru, and it added a nice bit of depth, and I figured that I could actually do some more deep lines with it. I did that as well for the witch piece, and also the and the swing piece, even earlier than that one. So yeah, but this was the first time I, like, distinctively remember making the conscious effort to do that. Okay, and then the next piece was me trying to do something a little bit different. I decided to do another landscape, but this time with a little bit more of, like, weight to it. And I taped this one down again. I started taping it down, it looks like at day... Frail, day 8. So yeah, I ended up drawing... I wanted to initially draw, actually, Mount St. Helena? Erupting, but I decided that was a bit too recent, so I went back to Pompeii, which is actually an interest of mine, and decided to draw that instead. So I decided to go ahead and use my Suma ink pen to draw the people, to add a little bit more life to the lines, and then for the buildings, I ended up using my dip pen again because it was easier and a lot more fun. And I decided not to care so much about like shading inside the lines with this one, and I think it actually turned out a lot more like, what's it called? It turned out a lot more lively than anything before it had in terms of shading. Okay, and so this is where we do a little bit of a return to just plain old black and white, and for Overgrowth, my initial idea was probably the same as many people's, which was to draw something being overgrown, like literally. So a building that has like vines all over it and that sort of thing. But I decided to draw instead a human or something, you know, fantasy-like that had grown to a large size. So it ended up being inspired a bit by, what's it called? By... fucking god, that fucking Hayao Miyazaki, by Ponyo, and Ponyo's mom, because she's so large and she's in the water, and I did not use a reference for the barge, even though I really should have. But yeah, this was, I used acrylic for the stars in the sky, and that really worked out pretty well. I decided to use, the decision to use acrylics was definitely better than using a jelly roll. And this is actually one of my favorite pieces from this entire thing, because I actually put so much care and effort into it, and this was my day 15 piece, and it's of the Loch Ness Monster, and he just kind of comes up and says, "Hey, hi, how are ya?" to a dude, and yes, that was kind of inspired by Jeffree Star, but I just enjoy how he's just so cute. He's like so blob, he's like such a blob, and he's got like a good environment, and there's like a Scottish castle in the background, and it actually says Loch Ness gift shop in the back as well, and I just enjoy it. Alrighty, and then for day 16, I decided to draw a club, even though initially I wanted to draw some fan art of Overwatch. I was going to draw, I believe, McCree initially, and then I was going to draw Ash, but I couldn't figure out how to draw them, so I decided to instead do a party, because another interpretation that I had of wild was like a wild party, so that was what I decided to do there. Then the next piece was, let me see. It was ornament. And this one is something that I like the idea of, but I definitely think I could have executed a little bit better, especially in terms of composition and like general originality, because this was heavily inspired by The Nightmare Before Christmas by Tim Burton, which I am sure a lot of you have seen. And so basically it's just a tree made out of bones, and there's a head in a box, and that's pretty much where that one. And then this is probably my least favorite. The next one is probably my least favorite out of all of the days, which is day 18. And it's a Peach Girl fan art because, what's it called? I forget what it was. I think it was Outsider or Loner or something or Outcast, for day 18. So I decided to go ahead and draw Momo from Peach Girl, because she is outcast and loner and all those nice words, but I'm not really happy with the way the anatomy turned out. Like, the pose that I had for her was a lot cuter in my initial concept sketch, and then it just got worse and worse as the more I drew it, so I decided to finally bite the bullet and just draw it as is. And her hair looks kind of weird. But, I mean, it's not like the worst thing in the world, it's just a bit out of proportion, and I could have definitely used some digital art on this one to make it look a lot better, or, like, digital help on this one to make it look a lot better, so I could get things more in proportion and, like, notice my mistakes earlier and fix them a lot more easily. So this one was inspired, the next one, which was Sling, was inspired a little bit by my bait piece, actually, and I decided to draw something a little bit more simple and more, like, an object. I took this one literally because I didn't have many ideas besides like a cast, and I liked this idea a little bit more because it allowed me, it was a little bit simpler and allowed me to like mess around with it a little bit more. The only thing I would improve for day 19 would probably be the words in the background. I would probably move the banner a little bit higher so that you can actually see the words and realize that it says Sling and not just Slin. So that's what I would do with that one, although I do like it, and once again I think it would work pretty alright as a tattoo. Alrighty, and then this next piece I'm actually pretty proud of because I haven't really had much luck with drawing curly hair or simplifying curly hair in an anime style, so it's pretty groundbreaking for me to have drawn this character, the one on the left for us, having drawn her with curly hair. So the prompt was tread, and I took that to mean walk. I initially thought I would draw like a shoe or something, but I decided to just draw two people walking together, mostly because it was my I just wanted to get back to my anime roots, and I really like the way her outfit turned out. I think it looks really cute, and I definitely used a couple of references for that. I also used a couple of references for the guy's outfit, although I don't think his hair turned out quite as well as hers did. It's kind of inspired by my boyfriend's hair, not gonna lie, but, you know, my boyfriend's hair looks a lot better than his still. And then this next piece I'm actually quite proud of is Treasure, and it is an ibis, and it was inspired by mummified ibis that I saw in, I think it was not a mummified ibis itself, but like a statue of an ibis from Egypt, from the Egyptians, and when they buried the mummies, when they buried the pharaohs, they buried a whole bunch of stuff with them, and one of them was a ibis, which was, covered in jewels and stuff. Or I don't actually think it was covered in jewels, but I think it was made out of some sort of precious metal. So I decided to go ahead and draw that and add in some color and stuff, and this was the first time I ever used color. I don't know if I ever used color again because it was such a huge... Actually, I definitely did. But it was such a huge pain in the butt to color this one. It wasn't quite as bleedy as the next thing that I tried to color in, but it still doesn't look quite as nice because I don't have the nicest markers. But it did turn out pretty alright. So this next piece, I was working on something special for it, and then I realized that, the ink runs with my markers, and I didn't want to post something that I wasn't proud of, and I was running out of time, and I really wanted to just go to bed, so I decided to go ahead and draw a cute little ghost saying my apology for why I was so lazy with what I drew. Okay, so his next piece is of Apollo, and the prompt, I believe, was Legend, if I remember correctly. He is definitely inspired by a Smite version of the character, a bit cocky, a bit of an asshole, which is what I decided to do and, try to incorporate in his stance. I think it turned out really, really, really well in the sketch, which is why I included that in my post on Instagram, but the final piece wasn't quite as good. And he was also a little bit off-center, so I had to include that weird shape in the background just to make him look a little bit more centered on the page. But I do think he turned out pretty well, all things considering. I could have definitely, thickened up the lines a little bit in some areas, which I do end up doing a little bit later on in some of my other pieces, and I decided to give him a little bit of a white outline rather than just having the shape connect with him because I feel like it helped him stand out a little bit more. Alrighty, and then this piece is called... the prompt for this piece was Dizzy, and I decided to draw, initially I wanted to draw, a My Little Pony character, and them being all cute and, sitting being dizzy, but I ended up drawing something definitely much more anime-styled, and initially I had, the idea of somebody's, head turning around, how you would get dizzy, but I went from that to this because I thought that this, was a little bit deeper and had a bit of a more of a meaning to it. So it's supposed to be all the same character, first and foremost, with the youngest on the left, and the oldest on the right, so the one in the middle is in the middle. And she's, somewhere in her late 20s, early 30s, or something like that. But yeah, so that's why I decided to do that, and I think that it turned out pretty well. The face in the middle I'm not quite as proud of, but I definitely do like the face on the left the most out of the bunch, because I think it turned out the best. And this was the second and final time that I decided to use my my Copic markers, not Copic markers, my markers, and I decided to go ahead and draw for Tasty a humanized cosmic brownie, because right now I am on a cosmic brownie binge, and I wanted to do something colorful and fun, so I thought why not do a cosmic brownie, because it's got lots of rainbow colors, and that's where her hair comes from, and her dress is inspired by the cosmic brownie, and I actually really enjoy the way that her dress turned out, and I might make her into a character for me to draw more of, because she is such a cute character, and I really enjoy her braids and her buns and stuff like that, and I think she turned out really well. This is also one of my more Instagram-y posts with my materials on the side there. I used acrylics for the highlights on this one, and it didn't turn out quite so well because of the fact that it was a little bit shaky in the way that I was drawing the lines, so the acrylic paint didn't lay as flat or as smooth as I wanted it to, which was irritating. Okay, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what this prompt was, but I decided to draw something something at the I wanted to draw something to do with the Marianas Trench, so I ended up actually drawing. I did some research into like what lives at the bottom of the Marianas Trench, and I decided that I wanted to draw zombie worms, and they tend to live on whale carcasses, dead whale carcasses and dead whale skeletons. So I decided to go ahead and draw a whale skeleton and put some zombie worms on it. So that's where that came from. And then this one is day 27, and I forget what the prompt is for this one as well. I think it was coat. And I decided to go ahead and draw a guy coating a wall with some black paint. And him being really sarcastic and rude about it because he just wants to be done and he wants to go home. Yeah. I like the sketch a lot for this one, actually. I think it turned out, once again, better than the final piece. And the Sumi ink, you can see, did not react so well with the jelly roll. So the jelly roll turned out not nearly as vibrant as it would typically be. Okay, and this one is day 28, and it is Ride, was the prompt for this one. And I actually really like the way that this turned out in the final image. The only issue I have is the stars in the background. I think the stars from the one from Overgrowth or whatever it was called, turned out a lot better, mostly just because of the fact that there was more variation in the stars, I feel, and there were less stars. But yeah, I decided I wanted to draw a girl driving in a, like, really 60s car with her boyfriend in, like, what's it called, in California. So I decided to draw her, like, driving down that famous, like, pathway full of palm trees. I don't know what it's called. And her boyfriend's completely blacked out because I thought that it would be a really good way to, like, show depth in the image, and it really, I think, helped it a lot. I also decided at this point in time to do some more shading with pencil because I wasn't really digging doing the ink stuff because it was getting messy and I wasn't having as much time to do my art as I would have liked, because I stopped doing it one day before, and I started doing it on the day of because I ran out of time and I just needed to get things done. Okay, so this next one is so the next like one, maybe two, the proportions are like really off, mostly because I was rushing to get them done. And I didn't have the time to actually figure out how to do the proportions correctly. I was more worried with this one about how his hands would turn out in proportion to his face, and then I completely forgot about how his body was, like, super tiny and his head was super massive. And then he was way off center, so I decided to go ahead and put some random shapes in the background, and I think the shapes are nice, but I don't like him quite as much. And I forget what the prompt is for this one as well, so that's not a good sign. Okay, and now we're, like, at our last two. And so this one is Catch, and I decided to draw something like tongue-in-cheek a little bit, like tongue-in-cheek. And I felt like it would be fun to do two pieces for this one because I wanted to try and do something a little bit more substantial. So I decided to go ahead and for Catch, I drew a girl catching a ball in a mitt. I actually have another piece that I finished for it, which was a girl throwing the ball for her to catch, but I decided not to do that because it didn't fit with the rest of it, and it was unnecessary information. So I went ahead and drew her catching it, and then I drew her, like, looking at the ball, and it says feelings on it. Get it? Because she caught feelings. Alrighty. And then this last one I'm actually really sad about, mostly just because it is a pretty personal image to me, and nobody liked it, and I did a lot of reference study for this one. I think it turned out really well. And I decided to go ahead and draw a man staring death in the face, and the prompt for this one was ripe, and I decided to take ripe for the reaping as what I would use for the basis of this image. So this is a skeleton, or death staring an old man in the face as he is about to die. And this was actually drawn the morning that I thought that somebody in my family was dying. He's still alive for now, but he's definitely going to be dying shortly, so. But yeah, so that's the last prompt that I did. And I also did all those dots in the background, like, by hand, and it took me a really long time. It was really tedious. Kind of like, what's it called? Cathartic? I think that's a word for it, but at the same time, it was still really irritating, and I was watching Big Mouth in the background, and season 3 got really weird. And this concludes my, look back on Inktober 2019. So thank you all for watching, especially if you made it to the end of this video. And have a nice day, and I'll see y'all later. Bye! Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, do all those great things. Hit that bell icon so that you can get a notification whenever I upload in the next 6 months. You never know when that might happen. So, see y'all later. Bye.